Flirties, on the show today, we're talking heartbreak, getting over your ex and turning your breakup into your breakthrough with Lucy Price. Lucy is a breakup recovery and relationship coach that uses evidence-based techniques to help her clients get over their exes, deepen their sense of self-worth and self-love, and move forward in creating healthy relationships and a life that is joyful and fulfilling. Whether you've been ghosted, blindsided by someone, going back to your ex, or stuck in the pain of what could have been, Lucy is here to walk us through it all. Hello, Lucy, and welcome to Flirtation.
Hi, Benjamin. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for making the time to record for this good old show we call Flirtations today.
Hey, flirties.
Surprisingly, this is not a topic that has really been covered on the show, right? We've dabbled in it in many conversations, and I can think all the way back to maybe around episode 20, exploring themes of rejection, boundary setting, saying no, all that good stuff. But a standalone episode on breakups, heartbreak, and the recovery process. Here we go.
Oh, this is such a treat then. Oh, yes. I'm even more excited to be here. It's such an important topic. And I will say there's a part of me that's not too surprised to hear that too, because I don't think we talk about it a lot as a society. You know, when we think about grief, when we think about heartbreak, it's one of these universal experiences, but it's also an experience we really get nervous around. We don't know what to say when someone's going through a divorce. We are afraid of saying the wrong thing. We don't know how to deal with uncomfortable emotions. So that doesn't surprise me, but it also makes me even more excited to be here having this conversation with you, just to normalize it a little bit more.
Yeah, already some really good points. Like when you have a friend, a family member, right? Someone going through a breakup, it's like, what do you say, right? It's going to be okay, right? Just focus on yourself, love yourself. You're like, well, okay, but also what else?
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's all well and good. Like, yes, you know, all the side comments from your friends of like, he was trash, you're going to find someone better. Like, Don't get me wrong. That's one of those things we say, but also like the what else? Like, how do we show up and how do we handle that? And so already off the bat, my brain goes to like, if you're listening to this and you're listening to this because you have someone in your life who's going through a separation or a breakup, I also just want to normalize asking them for what they want. Because sometimes we get really in our heads about like, oh my God, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do something that's going to hurt them more. But also just asking them like, hey, I love you. I want to be here for you. Are you looking for companionship? Are you looking for a distraction? Are you looking for me to give advice? Like, is there anything you're looking for, or do you just want me to be here? Like, it's okay to just ask that question. You don't have to know all the answers. And it's not even about necessarily getting it right. A lot of the time, it's just about being there and showing up.
Yeah. And that can really help alleviate maybe some discomfort we might have of not knowing what to say or what to do. Let's ask the person.
Right. Exactly. Because they might have an inkling. And even if they don't have an inkling, breakups, divorces, separations, the grief of heartbreak, it's already a lonely experience. And so even if we can just take away a little bit of that loneliness, you're doing enough in just being there for the other person.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And we're going to be getting more into all the nuances of breakups, of heartbreak, right? Ending relationships, whether you're the one ending it or maybe someone else made that decision for you. We're going to be getting into it all. But here at the top, learning a little bit more about you. Did you have a breakup into a breakthrough moment in your life, Lucy?
I absolutely had a breakup into a breakthrough moment in my life. Absolutely. So I had a couple, I will say, but the one I refer to most in my content was a relationship that was very on again, off again. And it was a relationship where there was, looking back, you can see the carnival of red flags. But when I was in it, I was so in it. I didn't see all of the ways in which words weren't matching up to actions. I didn't see all the ways in which I wasn't being treated with the care and respect that I wanted to be treated with. But when I was in it, I was really attached to this person, really invested in the relationship. And I was really willing to do anything to make the relationship work in some way, whether that was compromising my own standards to changing parts of who I was. I just really was invested. And I, like many people, I found out that there was cheating going on in the relationship. I found out through seeing messages pop up on an iPad in his apartment when he had left for work and I was still there. And it completely crushed me. And I had this moment of just crying in my car in the parking lot, realizing that he was never really going to choose me. Like he was never really going to want to be with me. And that's when I just started to have so many like little breakthroughs in that moment of, oh, I need to be the one to walk away from this. I need to be the one to call this. I need to do this not only for what I want in my life, but it truly started to feel like I was losing myself in this relationship. And so that relationship ended back in, I want to say like 2018, though my timeline might be a little off there. And it took me 2 years to get over this man because I was following all the traditional online advice that you'll see, which is it just takes time. Okay. 2 years later, I'm still waiting. Like, when am I going to just get over him? Right. Okay, you just need to date other people. Great. Now I'm dating other people, but I'm also feeling confused because I still have these feelings for my ex, but now there's this new person and I don't want to hurt them, but also I want to move on. And this is what everyone tells me to do. So I just got to do it right. And then I did all the distraction methods. You know, I did the online shopping. I did the going out and drinking. I did the scrolling on the internet. And it just seemed like nothing was working. And so, of course, like I think many people, I started to ask the question, well, maybe there's just like literally something wrong with me. Maybe there's just something broken in my brain and it's a me problem and other people don't have this problem. But of course, then I would go on to Reddit and I would see all the forums of people like, can't get over my ex of 5 years, you know? So I started to really get curious about like what was actually going on? Why was this so hard for people? I started to go into the studies and I just became really, really passionate about learning about heartbreak, learning about relationships. At that time, I also hired my first, she was more of a general life coach, but she had some really good information out there on breakups. And I started to actually find tools that worked. And so my journey is a little like many people, it's such a roller coaster. I got into this from a lot of different ways, but it was two inspirations. One, I had gone through this really challenging breakup where I felt so alone. I lost friends in the process. I felt cut off from everybody. I kept questioning my worth as something was wrong with me. But then also I was already doing different forms of coaching at that time personally. Like I was a health coach, I was a fitness instructor, I was a yoga instructor during that time. And so kind of both of those passions came together around relationships, kind of when COVID happened and all the gyms and the work shut down. And I had gone through my own journey of processing. And I just realized like, there's something here for people. People don't have as many resources as there actually are to help heal from heartbreak and get through breakups. And we're all being fed the same 3 myths, which is like, it just takes time. You just need to distract yourself. You just need to date other people. And people are staying stuck. And I'm so grateful I got here, but a lot of it came from that heartbreak and then just being a little bit in the coaching space already.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Lucy. My head is buzzing with questions. I just one here for clarification. How long was that previous relationship?
So off and on, but it was on for about 2 years, I would say.
About 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And this is, I mean, one of the questions that came through several times, it's how long does it take? Right. I think it's going to be really individual because as we get into the nuances of what you're actually maybe breaking through like from or what you're recovering from, right? It's more than just maybe the person.
Absolutely.
It could be the connection. It could be the fantasy of what once was early in that relationship, what could have been, right? The potential of what we could be together. And so a breakup isn't just necessarily about, you know, losing kind of quote unquote, losing somebody, but letting go of all the other aspects of a relationship that aren't necessarily tangible, right? They're not something you can hold necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that we all want to have some sense of, okay, how long is this going to take? Yeah. I think in some ways, because it feels like a little bit of a lifeline, you know, of like, okay, well, if I just know that it's just going to take a year, then I just need to wait it out for a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot more nuance to it, like you said. I always say it's not even necessarily the amount of time you were together. It was also the attachment that's built up. It is the experiences you have together and how much those experiences impact you. It's any harm that came from the relationship. So for some people, being cheated on, that might be a really hard thing to overcome and to reconcile with. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But if I had to give an answer of how long does it take, I always kind of fall back on it's the amount of time it takes for you to process your emotions around the breakup, change your mindset around the breakup, and reduce attachment to your ex. Yeah. And there's not a timeline to that, but there are actionable things that you can do around that.
Okay. All right. We're going to be coming back to that approach and strategy. And I'll just offer here the Charlotte method. Right. Do you know about that one?
I haven't. I'm so excited to hear, though.
From Sex and the City. Love Charlotte. I took the Sex and the City quiz. I am a Charlotte. And she says that it takes a quarter of the time you were in the relationship to process, get over the person you were in that relationship with. So just simple math. I can do this one at least. If you were dating a month, it should take you a week, which something I've always just sort of kept in the back of my mind as a formula of sorts, but it's also going to be so individual.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, like you said, like if you were together for a month, it takes about a week. Yeah. I kind of hum and haw about that. But also that's just like my own experience, right? Like, I think that sometimes you can get over someone faster than you could ever imagine. And sometimes it takes you longer than you think. But I do think, like, as a general rule of thumb, there is something to be said of the Charlotte formula in terms of like, okay, depending on how long you were together, it also kind of then would set up how many experiences you had together, how open and vulnerable you got with each other. So I can see some of that in there for sure.
Yeah. And how maybe linked you still are, right? It's those lifelines of maybe you still follow each other on social media. You are still, you're maybe scrolling back. I used to do this through old text message conversations or old DMs, right? Oh, they used to send me this. They used to say this. And you sort of reminisce and long for that. Or maybe you're in similar friend groups or you run in similar circles. You see them out around town, going to work, going to school. Yeah. So it's not always like so easy to just let go. And I feel like the one thread that seems like is always remaining, and I hear this over and over, it's so interesting, is when they're still on like your Netflix or your Hulu, right? Like whatever, your streaming service of choice. And they still have their profile up there. It's like this last remnant that for some reason that one is for a lot of people the hardest to let go of.
And I think too, because it's a reminder of the good times. And I think that we get really attached to that. We get really attached to the highs and lows. Like when we're coming out of a relationship, something that's super common is we'll always remember the high highs. We'll always remember the low lows.
Yes.
But we often forget the day-to-days.
Yes.
And so we'll think back to, oh, remember that time we went on this magical vacation and everything was good. I just want to go back to that moment. But we don't recognize the day-to-day where they were stonewalling us or disrespecting us or weren't showing up in the relationship. Like it's just so easy to forget those things. And so it's sometimes it seems a little silly, but like it is the stuff like the Netflix profile where we just get those hits of like, oh, remember when it was good? Yeah. I'm not quite ready to let go of that yet.
Yeah.
And I also think that's a really great thing to recognize and be honest with, because sometimes we'll think to ourselves like, God, why is it taking me so long to get over this person?
Yeah.
And if we can just take a step back and do some like radical honesty, sometimes we'll realize because we don't actually want to let go yet. And that's part of what's keeping us attached to them.
Yeah, it's not easy as just block and burn, right?
No, and it's not.
Delete, block, right?
And I think that's partly why, one of the common pieces of advice is go no contact.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that that isn't helpful, because what going non-contact does, it allows you to create space from that person. So like you said, like if you're going to run into them all the time in your like hometown, then you're going to keep having like a picking at the wound, so to speak. You're going to keep getting reminded, oh, I'm not with them anymore. And who are they seeing and what are they doing and all these other things. But I think sometimes we forget that it's not always as simple as going no contact either, or we use no contact as like the thing that's going to get you over your ex. Okay, what if you have kids with them? What if you work with them? What if you had shared community or friends with them. Do you just not get to get over them? No, of course not.
Right.
And so I think that there's so much I could say about that, but I think it's kind of like the same sentiment of like, you know, sometimes we have these reminders of our ex, and that's okay. It's okay to have those things. And also, how can we set up life a little bit differently to create a little bit more space from those things so that we can heal and we can move forward if that's what we want to do?
Yeah. I mean, matters of the head and the heart, right? Your head might be saying, just turn, look the other way. What's in the past is in the past. But your heart is like, oh, but remember that one time? Remember when?
Remember when he remembered your birthday? Remember when he got you those roses? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, especially if, and yeah, let's go ahead and ask this question now. Like what you were saying is like we sometimes get stuck on those highs, right? We forget the lows, or we forget the day-to-days. We forget the times also we were talking about in the beginning of when we abandon our own needs, wants, and desires to just go all in, maybe give over and above to this other person who wasn't showing up for us in, you know, at least with compatible and consistent effort, right? Yeah. And so asking this question now, like as we start to get out there and date some other people, this one came through a few times, this comparison to the ex.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like as we're talking about some of the ways we get stuck in this healing phase of heartbreak, this is one of the ways that happens. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
It does happen. And I will say, like, I've experienced this myself too. I think it's very human to kind of compare who you're starting to meet or who you could potentially meet, who you're currently dating with people of the past. I think that's very human. And so one of the pieces of advice I have around that is when you notice that comparisons start to happen, how can you separate the values from your ex? So for example, let's say your ex was very charismatic and very funny. How can you separate that out of, I really value charisma or comedy or being able to banter with my partner, being able to talk with my partner, from that being very hyper specific to your ex? Maybe, you know, your ex was really compassionate and patient, and you're noticing like, okay, these new people I'm dating, they don't seem to really care about how I'm thinking or how I'm feeling. Instead of comparing the person to your ex, how can you compare the values of, okay, I really care about compassion. I really care about empathy. I really care about being able to express myself and my emotions. How can I use that value going forward into dating, as opposed to making it very hyper specific to, this is my ex?
Okay. That's really, really helpful. Yeah. It's like, it's not like your ex is the only funny person on the face of the earth or the only person that can make you laugh. It's just, if you value humor, and you probably do in your dating lives and in relationships, of course you can find someone else that can make you laugh and you make them laugh. And I bet you might find someone even funnier.
Absolutely. And also, like, how can you appreciate this different sense of humor? Because sometimes I think we look at comparison as only like a bad thing of like, oh, I'm comparing because I'm trying to see if they are like worse than my ex in this way, or my ex was so much better in this way. But if we can just shift the perspective a little bit, how can we instead see it as, okay, how is this person funny? How is this person kind? How is this person intelligent? How is this person interesting? And just create it again. It's like separation. How can we just create a little bit more separation between it being specific to your ex versus getting interested in a new person, getting to know a new person? Because the truth of the matter is, you're going to go through life and there will be things that remind you of your ex, and that doesn't have to mean anything. Like, that doesn't have to be this big monumental thing. It can just be like, oh, that's something my ex used to do. That's interesting. How does this person do it? Like, what is this person into? How did this person make me feel? Things like that.
Yes, as we say, fellow yoga instructor here. You got 2 yoga instructors on the show today. Just notice, right? I think so often we attach meaning to, like, I don't know, maybe like sort of an inside joke you had, or like a symbol for your relationship. I don't, it was birds, or like some kind of bird, and you see that bird and you're like, oh my gosh, is my ex thinking of me? Right? You just saw a bird. Right? I mean, not necessarily a deeper meaning. And then I want to say here, like, don't forget your own magic in all of this. as well. Probably why that relationship, it wasn't always all bad. You know, why there was some really great moments were because you were a part of that.
Right. You had a part to play too. We forget that relationships are a dance. They're a two-way street. You were involved in it.
Yes.
And going back to what you said about just notice, right? Absolutely. One of the things, like when my clients say to me, oh, I heard you in my head today, is always the standard question is, what are you making this mean? Like, what are you making different things mean? Because humans love to make meaning, but we forget that we can choose some of the meaning we're making.
Yeah.
And so, okay, you saw a bird. What do you want that to mean? You know, you get a say in that too. And you are involved in your relationship. So all these things that you're comparing or you're contrasting with your previous relationship, don't forget your part in that too. Like you're magic and you're bringing magic to this new relationship and you get to make something new.
Totally. And just a quick note here, like about this comparison question, what I sometimes hear is it's about the sex, Lucy. It's about the sex. You were a part of that. You were a part of the magic, right? And you're going to find someone who you can have even more amazing sex with.
Absolutely. And we forget too, like, so I have opinions about sex. I think we forget too that, so this is a new thing that I've been thinking about in regards to sex, that sex is also a conversation, a dialogue, and a skill.
Totally.
And we forget that we are contributing to that conversation and that dialogue, and that we get to learn different people's sexual preferences. We get to, you know, enhance our skills. Like sex is something that you can definitely find great sex again. And also, if you're with someone who you really like, you have a lot of compatibility with, you have values with, but like the sex could be better, you can always also work on that. I think we get very shy around this idea when it comes to sex that we shouldn't have to work at it. Kind of like relationships too, if I'm being frank. Like we have this idea that it should just happen. It should just be fireworks. And it's like, yes, but you contribute to that. They contribute to that. Skills contribute to that. Knowledge contributes to that. Experience contributes to that. It's not just going to happen. Like it does take people and people working towards it. So you could also work towards having a great sex life too.
Yeah. Do you follow Todd Barrett's Your Dying Nonsense?
Oh my, yes.
Probably. Yeah.
Yes,
this is
I do.
Something I've learned from him, and it's great. It's coming up in the conversation now as well, that sex is a skill. I think we just take for granted or somehow think and believe that all of this stuff, we're just supposed to be good at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially like if you've done it before, but hold up, this is perhaps a skill you're learning, you're building, you're co-creating with someone that you don't know, and you might need to learn some different skills or
I think that's where having so much like compassion and patience too can really come in handy. Like having compassion for yourself, for learning new things, learning new skills, not letting shame just eat you up, because shame is just going to keep you stuck around this too, but just leaning into curiosity. I think that whenever we're noticing, okay, maybe there's something for me to learn here, leading with curiosity is going to get you so much further in actually getting the result that you want to have, whatever that is. Maybe that's better relationships, you know, being better at flirting, being better at dating, being better at, you know, even breakups. Like there are ways in which just leading with curiosity and compassion and empathy for yourself can take you a long way.
Absolutely. Because that approach then, well, it keeps you in the moment. So if you tend to future pace, like you think about, oh, what could have been, sort of fantasy thinking, or you're going back in the past, or you're starting to date someone new and you're comparing them, you're having expectations. Well, the first date I had with my last relationship with my ex was like, it was so much better. They did this and they're not, this new person isn't doing this. Like, hold up. Curiosity, notice, come back to the moment, and then don't forget you get to be the chooser in this as well, and just feel, I hope, more empowered, more confident, more clear-headed in this process. Yeah, so you can just make better decisions over time.
I also think too, like this might be a little bit of a side tangent, but a thought sparked of, I think sometimes we really get invested in the start of a relationship or the feeling of a relationship being a certain way. And I think sometimes, you know, like for me, this came from like good old Disney. Like Disney sold me the story of, let me just go sit in a tower and a prince is going to come save me and I'll live happily ever after. And it's like, you know, we're all taught these narratives and these stories about how things are supposed to look. One of the things I had to unwork in my last relationship, though, was, you know, with my ex, it was very hot and cold. I was really addicted to that feast and famine cycle. And I had to learn coming into dating again, coming into my now partnership, that all of the excitement that I experienced in that last relationship wasn't as healthy as I thought it was. And actually things feeling calmer, things feeling quote unquote, maybe a little bit more boring or neutral, that's actually a good thing for me. That's actually safety and security. So sometimes like things might not look the same. Maybe your first date with this new person looked different than it was with your ex, or maybe this relationship feels different than it did with your ex, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe this is just a different thing, or even a more healthy thing.
Right. Just because what's familiar, what you're used to, doesn't mean that familiar is safe, doesn't mean it's healthy, right? Sometimes our nervous system patterns to gravitate and look for what keeps us stuck in our own feelings of resistance, of making ourselves small, shrinking ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
Because that feeling of safety, really just familiarity, that familiar discomfort keeps us from really going after the relationships we want, the connections we want, just fulfilling our own potential, right? Putting ourselves out there, flirting. Yeah.
And our brains are always trying to keep us safe too, right? Like that's the other thing I think people forget when it comes to relationships breakups, is that your brain's job is to keep you alive. It's not necessarily for you to feel happy, feel fulfilled. It's to keep you breathing and living. And so your brain, like you said, is like, it's going to keep you in the patterns of familiarity, because familiarity is what your brain knows, even if it's not what you want consciously, it's what your brain knows. And so it's going to keep you in those cycles. And so remembering that just because something's uncomfortable, it doesn't make it wrong. You know, going back to yoga, for the longest time, this is just one of my body patterns. My knees would like cave in warrior 1, warrior 2, warrior 3. Like my knee would just cave in. And so when I first started practicing yoga, someone would always come around and just like steer my knee back into alignment. It felt wrong. It felt like different muscles had to come online to make that alignment happen. Now it's muscle memory, but at the start, it didn't feel like muscle memory. It felt like a lot of work, and it felt like muscles that I had not used before are suddenly being used. The same thing happens in relationships. Same things happen in heartbreak. Like those muscles of having to heal and process grief, they may not have had to come online for a little bit. Maybe you haven't had the process of losing someone, but like whether that's through a relationships, whether that's through death, whatever it is, but maybe you haven't had to engage the muscles of grief. That's okay. That doesn't make it like you're doing it wrong or anything like that. Those are just new muscles that are coming online.
Yeah. Very true. You had some good yoga teachers, it sounds like.
I did, thank goodness.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. And yoga tangent for me too. I have a crush on one of my students. I don't know what I'm going to do about it, Lucy. And so yesterday I I say this after pretty much every class, right? You know, if you have any questions about yoga, about our practice today, right? Come, just let's talk about it. Let me know. Hardly anyone ever asks questions, to be honest. They're ready to go. But he came up and he asked me a question. And I was like, do you have a question or do you just want to talk to me? But we kept it very yoga friendly, right? We were doing some forward folds. And when I was doing like half lift, flat back sort of thing in your forward fold. Yeah, what that means, what that looks like. I hope he comes back next week. All right. As we are really talking about the ways we sometimes get stuck in that process of healing through a breakup. We've been talking about a few different ways now, but I want to give some attention to this way we get stuck. And that is sometimes it's not so much about the person as it is about the fantasy, as it is about the potential. as it is about, wait, but they showed up this way early in the relationship, right? What happened? And we want to kind of recreate that magic. We want to see what we could be together. And it's letting go of the fantasy, what maybe wasn't even real versus the actual real person.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of processing breakups. Honestly, I think we face this more than we maybe even recognize.
Yeah.
And you may not have words for it like the fantasy self, but you may have words of, I thought we were going to get married. I thought we were going to have children. I thought that this was the one. You might have that sort of dialogue around it.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to, I have like a couple different approaches to this. I'll say both. And they're kind of paradoxical, but I think both can work. So it's really just trying on what feels best for you.
Okay.
I think one of them is being able to recognize where you are putting on rose-colored glasses around them and being really conscientious to not fall into the trap of thinking that they were someone that they weren't. So part of that is doing a little bit of a reality check. So looking at, where am I putting them on a pedestal? Okay, I'm speaking about them in all of these languages of, they were the one and they were so amazing and they were always attentive. Okay, is that true? Were they really always that way? Where were there other sides to them that you're not taking into account right now because your brain is blocking them out? So being really conscientious, taking them off that pedestal and finding evidence to the contrary of what your mind is telling you about this person. Okay. So I think that's one way you can go about it.
Okay.
I think another way you can go about it is just frankly allowing yourself to grieve the fantasy.
Yeah.
And letting yourself process the pain of, you're not going to get married, or they weren't the one, or you thought they were all of these things. So grieve all those things that you thought that they were. Allow yourself to feel those emotions, process those emotions, and then let it go. So I think you can take either approach, but I think this is actually a massive part of breakups, and the one that we just don't recognize as much. I think partly because we don't have maybe as much vocabulary around it.
Yeah.
But it absolutely comes up. And when I think back to the relationship I had to grieve, it was all of those things. I did the first route. I had the idea of, oh, he's this, ambitious, smart, intelligent, kind, compassionate man. I thought he was going to be in my life for such a long time. Actually, when I take a step back and I look at it, here are all the ways in which he ignored my messages. Here are all the ways in which he stonewalled me. Here's all of the ways in which I always felt like the problem. And I felt like I could never bring up topics that bothered me in the relationship because I was afraid that he was going to stonewall me or walk away from the relationship. So I could take a step back and go, actually, hold on. This isn't actually my ex. This is a version of him I built up in my head. So I went the first route, but there are other cases in which I think the second route and just letting yourself grieve those things is really beneficial.
Yeah. It's important part of this breakup process, whether you're on the receiving end of that breakup, maybe you're the one initiating it. Like, I think there's, sometimes we may have, sort of processed the breakup in the relationship and then we're just so ready to go. Or sometimes it's weird. I've been in this situation before where the breakup is almost a relief, right? It's like, who's going to pull the trigger, so to speak. And now you're both like, someone finally did. And you're like, whew, all right, time to go. Those sometimes breakups are a little bit easier depending on the circumstances and the nature of the connection, the relationship, but not all the time. And this is one of the ways, we get stuck. It's this being able to grieve the fantasy, the potential. And one thing that helped me here is I find a lot of hope in knowing that we have the ability to dream and crave connection and that we wanted the relationship. We wanted perhaps the marriage, maybe the family. I know it's not going to happen with maybe this person you thought it was going to happen with, but don't let them take away your capability to feel and connect. Absolutely. Even if you're in this phase of screw everybody, right? I'm never dating again. If you need to do that, do it.
And sometimes you go through a phase of that, right? Yes. I actually think that's probably part of the grief cycle is when we get into such an angry place of well, I don't know. We can swear here, right? Like, fuck
absolutely.
This.
The thing is, Lucy, I'm still going to rate it clean.
But yeah, it's like, screw this. Like, I'm never dating again. Like, to me, that's such an anger response and grief.
Yeah.
And you get to make that choice too. Like, I do have people who just in my daily life who truly never want to date again. And you know what? More the power to you. If that's what you want for your life, that is okay. You get to make that decision too.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times we have these knee-jerk reactions because we're frankly going through something, like we're grieving and we're processing. And like you said, that ability to dream, sometimes all of those fantasy versions that we saw, sometimes fantasy versions of ourselves too. Like sometimes that's also what we've got to grieve, the part of ourselves who we were in that relationship, the side of ourselves that got to come out in that relationship, what we thought might come just in our own lives from being in that relationship. I think sometimes we have to grieve those things too. But sometimes just recognizing, oh, that was the fantasy, can clue us into our desires of, oh, I do want to get married. I do want to have kids. I do want to meet someone and move to the Bahamas, wherever, whatever the dream, whatever the vision, like sometimes it can just indicate to us our values. And that's a really priceless piece of information to take forward into your next relationship.
Yes.
And here's the catch. You still get to have it. Yes. You might not have it with this person, but you still get to have the love. You still get to have the white picket fence. You still get to have the things that you desire. Yep. You just might have a different path in getting there. And I think sometimes it's helpful to remember, okay, even though the path wasn't what I thought it was going to be, it wasn't what I intended it to be, maybe it isn't even what I want it to be. You can probably look back in your life where you realize, oh, I'm so glad that path didn't work out because I wouldn't be here if it did work out. I'm the living example of one of those. My last relationship, awful. Don't recommend, wouldn't do it again. But if I hadn't have had that happen, I wouldn't have been, frankly, prepared for this relationship now. I wouldn't have learned how to healthily communicate, how to emotionally regulate, how to get clear and hold my boundaries and my standards in relationships. I would not be dating the person I'm dating today. I would not be running a business like I am today. Like that path needed to not work out for me to be here. And we can't see it when we're in it. That's the tough thing about being human. You
can't see it necessarily, when you're in it, but sometimes, those lessons get revealed over time. The new path gets revealed as you're presented different choices and different options, and knowing how much control you have ultimately over your experience, because we can't change the past, but we can certainly act here in the present and then dictate or influence how our future is going to go. I think that piece too of what can you influence, that's actually such a handy piece of like wisdom, because sometimes we really fixate on the things that aren't in our control. And we start then feeling like our power is slipping away. But you actually really are powerful. You have things that are within your control. So what is within your control to influence? That could be what you show up and do every day. That could be the thoughts you're practicing. That could be your ability to regulate your emotions. But there are things that are within your power of control. So how can you look at those things and find comfort in those things too? Like, okay, these are the things I can influence. And I'm going to let go of what I can't. Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I think, why so many of us are in this phase of, screw dating. I don't need anyone kind of thing. I can do it all myself. Because if you're dating, and we're going to get into some of the nuances of different types of breakups and rejections here in a moment, situationships, ghosting, it's a lot. It's a lot to handle. And so if we're experiencing these moments of anger, of being let down, of feeling like we're just giving, and wait, when is someone going to give back to us kind of thing? I completely get it. But something I've been working with lately, just in my own mind and in my own coaching, is relationships are where you go to heal. They're where you go to for safety. Yes, they can re-wound you sometimes. Things might come up that you're going to need to work through, but they're where you go to just exhale. And these are relationships across the board, friendships with family, with neighbors, and certainly romantic partners. Like, so for anyone that's in this, mindset of like, I'm never having the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the partner, whatever. Okay, like I hear you, and maybe you stay there. I don't know. Sometimes we do. Whoopi Goldberg, I'm looking at you. Doesn't want anyone in her house using her towels, eating her food, nothing. Rummaging through her refrigerator, not having it is Whoopi Goldberg. But I still want it, right? I want to be in partnership with somebody. I do, because I know that I get to explore different parts of myself. I get to be a more fully realized version of myself. I get to have someone to collaborate on life with.
Yeah. I recently, so I'm going to talk about my own relationship, because I've been thinking about something quite similar as well, which is I do think that there are some wounds that come in relationships that I have this theory can only really be healed in relationships too.
Absolutely.
And sometimes relationships help us to heal things we didn't even know we had a wound around.
Yes.
So I've been with my partner now for 5 years. We just had our last anniversary.
Congratulations.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my God, my past self would have never guessed.
See, it's possible. Break up to break through.
Yes. And it's like a small thing, but I was in the kitchen like a couple months ago. It was the first time I noticed this, and I just spilled coffee. It wasn't anything major, but he just said oh, whoops, and started cleaning it up. And I had this flash of when I was a child getting screamed at for spilling something in the kitchen. And I realized if anybody knows me personally on my own channels or anything like that, I probably talked about this before. Me and kitchens, we don't get along. Cooking, don't get along. Not going to do it. Couldn't care less about being in the kitchen. Sorry, not me. But I realize in part, my partnership, a lot of those things are weirdly being healed. One, he loves cooking, which is great for me. But also just his response to different things, response to accidents is different than I had growing up. His response to emotions is different than I've experienced in past relationships. There are just things that sometimes we don't even realize we have a little bit of a hurt around, but our relationships can help us to heal those things, or even just shine a light that it's there. Absolutely. So I think there's so much. I actually I think the Western civilization, America in particular, we're so hyper individualistic. And I think we forget that actually humans have not gotten to this point without other humans.
Nope.
We have not survived thousands of years without other people. We are derived from communities. If someone did not know how to hunt, you weren't eating. If someone didn't know how to gather berries, you weren't eating. If someone didn't know how to put up a shelter, you were freezing. If you got kicked out of your community, the chances of you not surviving increased exponentially. And so our lizard brains are very much wired for connection. And so it makes sense when we get hurt by someone that we want to knee jerk and go, you know what? I'm fine by myself. I don't need anyone. And in many ways, our society supports that. Our Western society support that. And also, when we look back in terms of people's health and well-being, actually connection matters a lot. Connection lowers stress. It helps with cortisol levels, heart health, so many different things on a physical level, but also on an emotional, practical level too. Yes, you don't need people as much as you did. You don't need someone to go hunt for you. You can drive up to your local Meijer and you can buy something. That is true. And also, humans are social creatures, and we are looking for connection. And I actually would argue that we do need it.
Oh my gosh, me too. Speaking to my flirty, my flirty heart, Lucy. This is the core of my mission and what I do as a flirt coach. It comes down to connection, and I bring my previous experience as a city planner into the work I do, as a yoga teacher and coaching, bringing all of that into the work I do. Connection, it's a part of health. Like it's a part of our well-being. Like if you look at some of the blue zones around the world, if you've read the Blue Zones book, right?
Obsessed.
It's not the wine necessarily. It's not the nuts or the fish or the olive oil
or
the access to nature, the
yeah.
coffee. I mean, that's all a little bit part of it for sure. What you eat matters, the air you breathe and the water you drink. Yeah, we're health coaches here too, but it's community, it's connection. It's not having to go through life alone. It's, you know, when you, just classic example, need a cup of sugar, do you DoorDash or Instacart that? Or can you just, hey neighbor,
hey, right? Old-fashioned way neighbor, right? Can I get a cup of sugar?
Yes. And we've like our societies, a lot of them around the world, we outsource all of this now to, and I know some of it is just absolutely necessary, where like it's the daycare, it's the person that does our grocery shopping, it's the person that delivers our food, right? We outsource a lot of things for convenience and also necessity. But what if we could create that within our own communities? And then you have your social networks, which provide safety. And also so much about this element of connection is co-regulation. Like this is why we oftentimes feel like we can let go and just feel more authentically ourselves in relationships that are supportive, that are safe, that are nurturing, is because our nervous systems co-regulate one another. Yeah.
I think that's where there's, I'm going to bring it back.
It's why we love cats.
It's why, oh my gosh, why we love cats.
Yes.
Yeah, we both connected over that at the start, didn't we? No, I think that's also why too, kind of bringing it back to breakups for a second, where I also think that's what makes it hard sometimes, because often our exes are, when we think about relationships as a society, we've started to increase the importance on your partner being the provider for so many of these resources in many ways: connection, security, comfort, sometimes providership, sometimes companion, like all these different things that we used to have different accesses to through community and through groups and through friendships. And so I also think like that co-regulation, that cohabitation, that connection, we are often as a society now hyper focusing on the person we're dating to be that provider for us. And oftentimes that's why it's so much devastatingly harder when we go through a breakup, because we don't have that person as a source of comfort anymore, or a source of regulation, a sense of security, a sense of companionship, connection, all of these different things.
Yes.
And I think that's part of why we struggle with it so much as individuals.
I agree. Oh my gosh, Lucy, do you have a few extra minutes?
Yes, let's do it.
By chance, as I said, we're going to end on time, lied through my teeth, through my mustache, because I've got just a couple more questions here. I wanted to just, kind of wrap up this part about just the stuckness sometimes we feel and talk about those regrets.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a moment. Like I got a lot of questions here from the flirties where they're like, you know what? I'm doing my best. I'm healing. I know this wasn't the person for me. Maybe I ended it. Maybe they ended it. But I still feel like, you know, I could have done more. I could have, would have, should have done X, Y, Z, whatever, right? Or so speaking to those regrets a little bit.
And I think that with that is, there's a few different sides to this, but the one that I'm going to lead here with is we learn things most as humans through experiences. Okay. And so when you look back and you see that moment of regret, oh, I could have handled that better. I wish I had calmed down more in arguments before I had conversations with my partner about this thing. I wish that I had been able to better articulate my thoughts. I wish I had showed up differently in this way. Oftentimes, it's because of those experiences that we recognize the areas in which we desire to grow. It's because of those experiences that we see different sides of ourselves and how we could handle things differently in the future. And I think this often feels unsatisfying to us as people, because we're kind of like, okay, yeah, that's great. I now know the lesson, but I wish I knew the lesson then. And I think that's where we actually just have to find a little bit of acceptance more of, but you didn't know then. And that's okay that you didn't know then. Like, I'm going to tell a story that's not to do with relationships or breakups or anything like that at all. When I was 7 years old, I had many goldfish growing up.
Okay.
And I had a goldfish that I really wanted to swim with in the pool. Mm-hmm. And so I brought this goldfish in a little plastic cup and I poured it into the pool and it died.
Yes.
I feel a lot of regret as an adult about killing that goldfish. But at the time, I didn't recognize there was chlorine in the water. Right. I didn't know. I didn't have that information. Because of that experience, I now know not to put certain creatures in chlorine-filled water. Yeah. I feel really, like, there's still a part of me that feels really badly about that.
Poor goldfish.
Poor goldfish, you know? But it's one of those things, like, because that experience happened, I now know better.
Right.
And I think, like, these things just happen. Because I let men walk over me, I now know better to not allow that again in my relationships or to do what I can to adjust my response if that were to happen. Yeah. Because I've had hard conversations with people in the past and didn't handle it the way I wanted to, I now know how I want to handle it in the future. Mm-hmm. It feels unsatisfying, but I think that when we can find a little bit of acceptance of, oh, that was me learning the lesson, when we can start to see it not as I did that wrong, but that was the moment I learned. Right. I think we can just form maybe a different relationship to the past experience, because it did happen. It is done. It is over. But you did learn something that now, because you've gone through that experience, you can apply it to the future. Yes. I think it's just the human condition.
Yeah. Radical acceptance, sometimes they say, in the coaching world, but it's a part of this is repatterning and just reforming that relationship you have with yourself. Yes. But also your patterns, your behaviors, your actions, noticing, leading with curiosity, feel the grief, the loss, maybe the embarrassment, the regret, feel it. Yeah. Name it perhaps, but then recognize and remember you have so much control over how you can influence how you move forward in future relationships too, as we talk about like how to get sort of unstuck and allow breakup, heartbreak to be your breakthrough. This is certainly one way you do it. We're going to end on healing here in just a moment, squeezing in one more quick question because we got to talk about ghosting, situationships, like just being mindful of time, like why, we've been really organizing this conversation around that romantic relationship, and not saying ghosting or situationships can't have this, these inherent romantic qualities of connection and attraction and all that good stuff. But sometimes it's the short relationship, right? It's the one, well, what are we? We're sort of feeling things out. It's the ones that end like a ghosting and just is over. Like one day someone was in your life and now they're not.
Yeah. I think with the situationships, I thought about this a lot, because I think that the more society has progressed, the more situationships have been more common, more normalized. Like we have a word for it now. And I think
not all the flirties like it, but I don't really like, what else do you say?
Yeah. What else do we call it?
I don't know.
And I think part of the reason why situationships are so hard to move past is because they aren't clearly defined. Yeah. And so we start getting into these thought traps of, well, I shouldn't be feeling this way because we weren't even dating. Am I allowed to feel this way? Were they even an ex? Or were they just someone that I poured my heart out to, maybe slept with every week? Like what were they to me?
Right.
And that's where I actually think that sometimes it's not even the label of the relationship that matters here. It's just grieve the loss of the person. Like, okay, it was a situationship, not a romantic relationship. It's clearly affecting you. So take out all of the thoughts of how you think you should feel. Don't worry about that for a second. What are you grieving? What are you feeling sadness around? What are you feeling heartbroken around? Allow yourself to just meet yourself there, and don't worry about the label for a second, because I've had people come to me from situationships, like I'll get a DM being like, hey, like it wasn't really a relationship, it was more of a situationship. Is that something you can help me with? Yes, because you're grieving the loss of a person.
Right.
You're maybe grieving the fantasy self, like we already talked about a little bit ago, of what you thought the relationship was going to turn into. You spent all this time, you've built up attachment. You don't need to have the label of a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner or whatever to feel attached to somebody and to mourn the loss of somebody. I think it's kind of like, I almost, and it different, but I kind of think about it in the way of like friendship breakups too.
Yeah.
Like we get really funny about friendship breakups, but it's like, okay, but sometimes we open up more to our friends than we do our romantic partners.
True.
So when you lose that person in your life, it's also still a loss. So how can you just meet yourself where you're at and allow yourself to grieve it without worrying too much about what you were or what you weren't or how long you were together, those types of things.
Okay.
So that's what I think about the situationships. I also, if you have thoughts, I would love to hear them. I'll also jump to ghosting next after that though.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this reframe of, I think sometimes we get caught in this trap of, oh, we didn't have the label. Maybe things weren't defined. It's like, well, it's still, where does the love go, right?
Yeah.
Like you still had this connection. There may have been some unhealthy attachment present in that as well. There may have been some holding back. Right? If you're not having conversations you maybe wanted to have or should have had, but you can change that moving forward into the future. And so I think coming back to some of these themes of curiosity, of self-compassion, of just allowing yourself to feel this, like, don't, sometimes I hear, well, I feel guilty or I feel bad or I feel weird or this feels wrong, that like, why am I like this person I was sort of in this casual connection with? We weren't actually dating, but we were hanging out. Maybe we're hooking up. Why do I miss them so much? Because you liked that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Because you like them. By the nature of relationships, you grew attached to them.
Yeah. And ghosting is like, that one is just, it's so abrupt.
Yeah.
It's so quick. You don't always see it coming and you might be ghosted. I hear this, and this is one of the things that just breaks my heart the most, is someone you're actually in partnership with. Like you're freaking dating for perhaps months.
Yeah.
And then they just ghost. And how do you get that closure?
Absolutely. And so I'm going to speak a lot about closure in this next one for ghosting, because like I've had people come to me from like really heartbreaking situations. I've had people had weddings called off.
Oh my God.
I've had people, like you mentioned, like all of a sudden they come home and the apartment's empty. Like I've had a lot of different situations when it's come to that. And when I think about the ghosting, like that is so hard because you have all of these unanswered questions. You have all of these things of like, why did this happen? How did this happen? Is there anything I could have done? Why didn't I see this coming? And also like in different circumstances when we're trying to find closure too, because that's kind of what I'm leading into. Like we also have struggle finding closure, even if we do get answers too. Sometimes we think to ourselves, like, this is something I thought a lot in my last breakup. Like if I could just get him to understand what he's doing wrong, if I could just get him to understand like how he's hurt me, or if like I could just like understand why he did what he did. If I can just understand why this happened, then I'll feel better. And it's a never ending battle. It's an uphill battle because we think as people that if we just get the answer, if we get the knowledge, then we'll feel better. Like I kind of joke around about this, but we as people, we like to think of ourselves as very, very like logical people. Like, oh, if I just know, if I just understand, then I'll feel better about it. But you can't outthink a feeling experience. And I think that there's a lot here where it's like, you've got to just let yourself grieve that you were blindsided. You've got to let yourself grieve that you were stonewalled. And when I get to the root of closure, it's easy to think that it comes from someone else, but closure at its root for me is the acceptance that the relationship has ended, or the acceptance of what happened has happened. And so the question I would ask is like, if you were ghosted, if you were blindsided, or if you're just struggling to get closure, how can you process your feelings around that? How can you get underneath what your brain is making this situation mean? Like what thoughts are coming up from this experience? And how can you start to find acceptance that what has happened, while you're processing the grief and while you're deciding, okay, if this has happened, where do I want to go from here? What next step do I want to take? But it's really easy to think that closure is going to come from another conversation, another answer. But you could have a conversation with your ex, you could get the questions to your answers, and it could feel not good enough. It could feel like not a good enough reason. It could feel like you have another question or you need to have another conversation. So, you know, it's so human nature to want to know the answer or want to know what's happened. But I think sometimes if we can just gently bring in, and also like, this is a feeling experience, it can help to just alleviate some of that pressure we're putting on having all the answers.
Yeah. Thank you, Lucy. I definitely wanted to start to conclude the conversation talking about closure because, of course, this question came through, whether it's a ghosting, the ending of a situationship, a relationship, somewhere in between, right? Like sometimes things end in a ghosting. Sometimes it's maybe a breakup we didn't fully see coming. Maybe it's mutual, but still, I feel like there's always this element of closure. And how can we ultimately give that to ourselves? Because going back to an ex, a previous relationship, looking in the past for those answers to your questions, the clues, right? Oh, right. Maybe what did that mean something and I overlooked it kind of thing. If you're always living in the past, how can you be in the present and then move forward? So just radical acceptance. Again, coming in clutch for us. Flirty's playback through that part of the conversation if you're going through this like closure aspect of breakups. And final question here before we conclude: how do I know when I'm ready to date again? Right? Classic. We got to end with that one.
Yes. So how do you know when you're ready to date again? So there's a few things that come up for me. But the top one I'll say is that you're noticing you're not thinking about your ex as much, but also when you do think about your ex, it's not as heavy. It's not as anxiety inducing. You can have the thought about your ex and then you can let it go. You can focus on other things. To me, that's a really good indicator that you're on the path to wanting to date again. The second thing I'll say is you're just curious about dating again. You kind of just have like little inkling. You have that little openness. Maybe you just see someone walking down the street and you have the thought of, oh, they look cute. And it's just that. It's just something simple. It's just like, oh, I'm starting to notice people again. I'm starting to think about maybe wanting to flirt with people again. Or I'm kind of, playing with the ideas of getting on the dating apps, or all of these different things can be just like little hints, little glimmers that, well, maybe I'm ready. Maybe I'm ready to put myself out there. Maybe I'm ready to give this a go. I also think that people forget you can dip a toe in and see how you feel. Like you can go out on a date and see how it feels to go out on a date, see how it feels to get dressed up, to talk about yourself, to put yourself out there. You don't have to just jump into, okay, bam, 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 date relationship. Like you can let it unfold a little bit slower and see how you feel in the process.
Yeah. Definitely. I agree with that. It's a couple things. And I'm just going to echo what you said. It's noticing those energy shifts. Right. And so maybe like if you've just been going through it, you're spending every night in, you don't want to go out, hang out with friends. All of a sudden you want to go out, or a friend hits you up and you're like, yes, but you've been saying no. You feel like, oh, wait, I have that outfit in the back of my closet. I'm going to put that on, or maybe I want to go shopping. Maybe I want to download the app. Maybe I want to make a profile. Just noticing when your energy starts to shift. And then also know that you get to do it, like date, and then decide, oh, wait, not ready. Like that can be part of it too. Like it's getting that information for yourself as well. Like just being able to know where you're at so you can feel like, don't wait until you're 100% ready. That moment may not come. There's going to maybe be some discomfort as you're looking to rebuild trust and figure out what you're looking for, what you want, all of that good stuff. But just noticing.
I think we really get in our heads about like waiting until like we're 100% ready. But sometimes it's actually the experience of going on the date that kind of moves us to the finish line. So definitely you don't have to be 100% ready. That's true for life. Like you don't have to be 100% ready to do anything. But where, like you said, where do you feel that energy shift? Where are you a little bit more open? Where are you noticing like, oh, this could be something I'm into.
Absolutely.
And just following those threads.
Wow, Lucy, this has been amazing. I don't want to say goodbye, but we have to. I just want to thank you for your time today to record for Flirtations. And I want to send all the flirties your way, to your socials, maybe your website, to your coaching programs. Yes, where can they find you, follow you, learn more, and work with you?
You can hang out with me over on Instagram at lucy.m.price. That's
Okay.
also the same on TikTok. If you want to hang out with me on my podcast, it's Breakups and Breakthroughs. So you're welcome to come on over there. And then if you are interested in working with me, there's a few different options. You can start off with the Over It Breakup Masterclass if you just want to dip your toe in. But if you're like, no, I need to talk to this woman, then you can schedule a connection call with me on my website, shiftyourstory.net.
Fantastic. I will have all those links in the show notes below for this episode and send the flirties your way for breakup support so they can have their own breakthrough. Lucy, thank you so much for being on Flirtations today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a treat, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.